So let me go ahead and bring in our very own Michael Richardson with the latest. Now, Michael, I know that you were breaking down school vouchers today. Tell me a little bit about this. I know that you've been kind of following this. We've been following this for some time. You have too.
Yeah, so this is a bill that's drawn a lot of attention. So let me try and break down what's happening. Hopefully, y'all can learn a little bit from this. So here's what's going on. The bill passed the Texas Senate in early February. After 2 months, after it's cleared committee, it's now, as we speak, being debated on the Texas House floor. If we can bring up the video of it a little bit, you can see State Rep Mihaela Plisa of Dallas, who I've spoken to in the past. She is against the proposed legislation. They're currently talking about amendments, and they're going to be going through these amendments. We want to add this to the bill. We want to take this from the bill. All in effort, to change it in one way or another. So that's what we're seeing. It's the same process we saw earlier today regarding a public education funding bill which passed. Again, that was different from the school vouchers one. But right now what we're seeing is debate that could go on for many, many hours.
So I know that it's been some time too where both of us have talked about school vouchers, whether it's been on East Texas Now or you're watching it on your computer giving us the latest information. Tell me exactly what was going on today for it to get passed.
That's a good question. So debate started a couple of hours ago. Even though the House convened at around 10, they started the day off by talking about that public education funding bill, and that lasted several hours. So from the beginning of this debate on school vouchers that we've seen so far today, there's been you've seen State Representative Brad Buckley, who authored the House's version of the legislation. And I want to make this clear, okay? There's multiple versions of the legislation. He's authored the House version, but they're not voting on that today, okay? They're voting on the Senate bill that passed 2 months ago, not the one that Buckley authored, a different bill. Similar, but different. That's a phrase that we use a lot in this industry, but it is important. So what we're seeing in terms of the debate and the amendments so far, one that stood out to me was one from State Representative James Tallarico of Austin. I've spoken with him in the past. He's against school vouchers. The amendment he put forward was basically saying this: this should go before the voters. What we want, we as in Representative Tallarico, what he wants is a referendum that voters across the state can vote on school vouchers, make their voices heard instead of having representatives vote on it. That was just one example of an amendment that's been put forward, and we're on Amendment 5 right now. There's probably going to be more, but that's
Definitely going to be more, Michael.
That's just one example.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts that kind of go into this, and I feel like it's going to take a long time. Even though we've been covering it for a while, I feel like it's going to take even longer now.
Yeah. I hope you brought your coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this could go into the night. Who we're seeing speak currently is State Representative Gene Wu, who is the House Democratic Caucus leader. Again, he's spoken out against school vouchers. Earlier in the day in Austin, just from videos we saw, there was a lot of individuals who went to the Capitol against this legislation. You saw multiple Democrats in the House Democratic Caucus speaking against this. Meanwhile, you have those who support it trying to march forward, trying to make it so that this passes, go through the amendments. You even saw Governor Greg Abbott actually hold a phone call with President Donald Trump, who actually called in so that he could encourage those who support the legislation to get it over that finish line.
And do you think that that's made a significant impact in this?
I'm not sure how much impact the president himself has had in this, but we have seen a lot of discussion about education under his administration. The Department of Education, there have been efforts to try and reduce the scope of the Department of Education while President Trump has been in office, give more power, as he says, more control to the states. What Governor Abbott, who's been championing school vouchers for a long time, is saying is we want to give more opportunities, more choice to parents. We want to allow them to go to a private school if they can't afford it. Sort of take the reins a little bit off
Yeah.
the public school. So there's a similarity there, but I don't know if I would necessarily say that the president is, directly responsible for this.
No, no, and I don't mean that at all in that way of the president is responsible. It's just there is significant impacts of who is going to be for this and who's going to be against this.
Well, there's a phrase we use quite a bit, and I think there's some validity to it, which is whenever you see something on a national stage, right, it often starts at the local or state level. Then it moves its way up. We see a lot of cases with the Supreme Court and stuff like that. And this is an example of a law. School choice is not unique to Texas, school vouchers. There are other legislation across the country that's similar. You even had former Arizona Governor Doug Ducey at the Texas Capitol a couple weeks ago championing Texas's effort because Arizona has a school voucher bill. It's different, and it's not exactly called ESAs from what I remember. But how Texas ends up going about this legislation, it could have a national impact. Other states could learn from this, try and implement a similar program. We'll see. We'll see if it ends up passing. And that's the big question, right? If there wasn't really a question as to whether this would pass the state Senate. It passed it multiple times before in other sessions, okay? The question is, can this get over the finish line, for those who support it in the Texas House, where it has been defeated in the past? And of course, Governor Abbott campaigned against incumbent Republicans who were against school vouchers in the last session. Prominent example, District 11. Representative Joanne Schaffner unseated former Representative Travis Clardy. Met a lot of that, her support, she campaigned on her support of school vouchers.
Right.
So the governor is confident he'll be able to pass it. It's just a matter of the vote now, and we're nearing that stretch. We're nearing that vote.